sometimes you don't use one child. So I think that's the word Star Wars. Well, let's be honest. The New Republic is and the next 2 hours, so this is the key way. You have to start on this. Well, you say that, but the next time I see this, you're like, there's a background noise. Teenage Rebecca. No, you can't do
Okay. Well, welcome to this, the first meeting of Economy and Skills Policy Committee. Welcome to people in the public forum, members, to officers, thank you for coming, I guess. There is no fire alarm expected, so if you hear the alarm go off, exit through the doors you came in and through the front entrance, go down the ramps to the right hand side and assemble adjacent to the cathedral. We are going to take a short 5-minute comfort break around about the 1 hour mark. So I shall keep an eye on time for that. Professionally suggested it will be after the item on regeneration service update, but we'll see how things are going. Do we have any apologies for absence and substitutions? Oh, I'm sorry, I've not done introductions, have I? Okay, can I ask members to introduce themselves, then officers, and then we'll move on to the rest of the agenda. So I'm Councillor Andrew Brown, I'm Chair of Economy and Skills, and a Councillor in Hengrove and Whitchurch Park Ward.
Thank you. Welcome everyone. I'm Kelvin Blake, I'm Councillor for Hillfields.
Hi everyone, Councillor Tom Enhard, Ward Councillor for Hallfield.
Councillor Mark Weston, Councillor for Henry and Brentry.
Councillor David Wilcox for Lockleys, and I'm subbing for Councillor Paula Walk.
I'm Councillor Rob Bryant, I'm St George West, and I'm subbing for Toby Wells, I think.
I'm Serena Wilson, I'm subbing for
Clifton Down. Oh, I'll start this again, shall I? I'm Serena Wilson and I'm Councillor for Clifton Down.
I'm Jenny Bartle, I'm the Vice Chair of this committee for Easton.
Jane?
Jane Taylor, Service.
You got to press the button.
There's a little button to make it for.
Hi, Jane Taylor, Head of Service, Employment Skills and Lifelong Learning.
Simon Wilding, the Chief Planner.
Good afternoon, Alex, Director of Economy and Place.
Good afternoon, John Smith, Executive Director for Growth and Regeneration.
Hello, Ben Hegarty, Finance Business Partner, Growth and Regeneration.
Yes, so I'm Amy Rodwell and I'm the Policy Committee Officer Clerk to this meeting today.
Thank you very much. So now we can move on to apologies for absence and substitutions, and I think we've already had a heads up on some of those.
Yes, so we've received apologies from Councillor Fabian Brackles, Councillor Toby Wells with Councillor Barr substituting, and then we've got Councillor Paula O'Rourke with Councillor David Wilcox substituting.
Lovely, thank you very much. Can I ask members if they have any declarations of interest for this meeting? Nope. Brilliant. Chair's announcements. I think there's a couple of things I want to raise. First, this is obviously the first committee, the first meeting we've got of this committee, so it's hopefully going to be straightforward. But I will welcome any feedback from you afterwards. And also I want to particularly welcome those councillors who are new to the chamber, because not only are you having to get used to being a councillor, not only are you having to get used to being the new committee system, you're also having to get used to being councillors as well, so welcome. The other thing I wanted to do was a brief update on the Harbour Committee. The Harbour Committee met last week. It's obviously a separate committee from this, but it is an advisory committee which will be looking at reports that will, and on occasion subsequently, come to this committee for key decisions. So we met last week and had essentially a business meeting, but we looked at a work programme, an extensive work programme for the following year, which includes a number of items which you will see in this committee in due course, including the harbour place-shaping strategy and the harbour efficient orders as well. So I can provide you with more information with that on that if you wish, but I just wanted to highlight that as one of the key things that's happened recently. The next item on the agenda is the public forum. We have up to 30 minutes for this item, and we have a number of questions and statements in. So we shall go through those now. The first two questions were from Martin Rands on the Baltic Wharf Caravan Park development. Is Martin here? Can't see him. Okay, so his questions have been answered in writing. The next three questions are from Suzanne Audrey on developments and regeneration. Suzanne, I can't see Suzanne. Have you seen the written answers that have been provided, Suzanne?
Yes, I have, thank you.
Okay. So can we take those as read and move on to your supplementaries? You have up to two supplementaries.
Yeah, cool. Yes, so for my first question, which was about the citywide family living charter, I thought this sounds a really worthwhile piece of work, but it seems to be a bit tentative, and it seems like there may be some delays with the process. So my question is, who's responsible for drafting it and taking it forward?
That's a good question, to which I don't know the immediate answer, so I'll Alex speak to that.
Thank you. So it's a piece of work that will be progressed between the planning service and the regeneration service together. We've had initial discussions about it and we're in preparatory stages of it, so it will be taken through a decision-making process to be either a supplementary planning document or the practice note, and it will come through this committee.
Thank you. And have you got a second supplementary, Suzanne?
Yeah, in relation to my question about consultations, I always think the officers' summaries and the officers' reports are quite a good summary of what people have put in, the comments they've put in. The consultations by developers, I don't think are as good, and often they paint a very rosy picture when people go along and they're really quite unhappy about something. So I just wondered, it's a bit cheeky, but are the officers' reports prioritised over a consultation that's been written by a developer?
Are you meaning when people are examining things in a planning committee?
Yes, on a planning committee, because obviously developers come along and paint this lovely rosy picture. Doesn't know whether...
I mean, having sat on the planning committee, I always prioritise the officers' reports, because that's the key information that we have to go on, and that we can obviously access both the planning portal and all the documentation on that, and anything else which we wish, including informal or formal site visits. But I would say that the primary documentation that planning committee members have is the officers' reports.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, next we've got a question on the local plan from Alan Morris. Hi Alan. Have you had an opportunity to see the response that's been provided?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and do you have any supplementaries?
I do. Actually, it's not necessarily a different question because my question was aimed at the committee and not at officers. And I suppose if I thought about it, process this, you get an officer to reply, but it's not a question that the officers could answer. Just to remind you what the question is, it's given we've had a change in administration and we're close, close to coming to examination, is the new administration, as embodied by this committee, going to review its stance on the local plan, or even potentially pause the process? If it's difficult to give a response here and now, I'd like a response from the committee to that question after the meeting.
I mean, although the answer provided does say it's an officer's response, I did have input into that. I can speak for my position, which is that the local plan was developed. It was obviously led by the previous administration, but there was a cross-party process that went into the development of all the policies and items in that local plan. It was submitted following a vote in full council that received support across the chamber. And we are in a situation whereby we don't have the previous local plan dates back to 2014 and therefore leaves the council open to developments that leaves the council with less control over developments that come forward, and therefore my approach is that it is imperative that we get a new local plan agreed and in place. We obviously, we obviously know that there's a bit of a potential for the goalposts to be moved, given that there is a new government in place, which will look to update the planning framework and may look to make changes to how spatial planning is developed. But I think we need to press ahead with the local plan. And that's not to say that there won't be opportunities to develop additional practice notes that could become supplementary planning policy documents that could potentially be additional to what's in the local plan, or provide clarity on some of the elements of the local plan, because it's we know that things never stand still. But for now, I don't think there's anything to be gained in pausing the process of the public examination. I will invite members of the committee to demur if they feel that they wish to take a different view, but that's certainly very much my position. All right, do you have another supplementary?
Yes, just a question for information. I see on the agenda that there's the promotion of the subcommittee on the new administration. Can I just check? I know we've got a new system now, and there is an emphasis on transparency. Will that committee, as before, not be public and not have its minutes published? Just yes or no?
The working group will be a cross-party working group. It's informal, and therefore we'll consider in this case the questions and the feedback from the planning inspectorate, which required answers from the council, and we'll consider how those answers are framed. The eventual decisions on the local plan will come back to this committee and to full council once the public examination has been conducted. The public examination, of course, is also public. Okay, next we have got 3 questions from Professor John Tarleton on the Baltic Wharf Caravan Park. I can see him indicating there. So, have you seen the written responses provided?
Yes, I did. Yes, it did come onto the website about midday, so I did obviously see it there.
Okay, and do you have any supplementaries? You can have up to 2.
I do. I have 2 supplementary questions. Just want to summarise that this is about the financial viability assessment of the Baltic Wharf development site and the fact that it was not going to be financially viable if any affordable or social housing was provided. So my supplementary questions, firstly, it was made very clear in the planning meeting that it would be social housing and not affordable housing that would be provided. And in fact, that was discussed at some length during the planning meeting, and I think it was quite influential in the eventual approval of that. It now seems from the answer that was given that it's now reverted back to affordable housing. Our point at the meeting was that affordable housing in that area is not affordable to most. And I'd like to ask the question, has that promise of social housing been revoked and is it now down to affordable housing?
Simone?
So social housing is a type of affordable housing. It was made clear at the committee. So there's no difference between what was being discussed at the committee to what is being taken forward now.
So you say it is social housing? It makes a big difference to people who are trying to afford the housing.
There is no change. And so a ratio of it is social housing and a ratio of it, it's different types of affordable housing.
They did say it was going to be 40% social housing, and this was discussed at some length.
It's all documented in the officer's report, and that's what's being followed through.
Okay, I'll have a look at the YouTube video because that makes it very clear it was definitely social housing. Okay.
Sorry, can we just pause there? Councillor Renner would like to clarify something.
I just thought it might be helpful to offer a couple of clarifying points. Obviously, when something is secured through Section 106, it doesn't stop it then having more affordable housing, because the grant that often is available from the national government is for non-Section 106 secured affordable housing. And the second clarifying point I just wanted to make was it was put in the Housing Revenue Accounts business plan to be 100% council housing as a split between social rent and shared ownership. Whether that continues to be the case will be subject to future decisions. That was separate to what would have happened at the Development Control Committee, so just hope that's helpful.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, just checking really that what they promised is what they're going to rely on. Okay, so coming back to the original point, if the provision of 40% social housing is not financially viable, will the council taxpayers be expected to subsidise this through Golden Homes, which, as you know, is the fully owned developer owned by the council? So effectively, will we be subsidising this development in order for it to get the social housing if there is no grant?
I don't think that would be a decision for this committee, and also I think that subject to the agreement that Goram has with its development partner as well, I would imagine. I don't know, Alex, are you able to say anything more on that?
There's no expectation that the taxpayer money delivering the affordable housing, it will be delivered through the development, and what was agreed in the planning commission with the Section 106 agreement is what we expect to be delivered, if not more.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so it is to be subsidised by the council's own developer.
I don't think that's what was said, but you know, you've had your 2 supplementaries as well. So. Okay, moving on to public statements. We've had 3 public statements in. So I'd like to invite members submitting public statements to speak to them now. Just to remind people that we have had the statements, members have had the statements and an opportunity to read them. So if you can summarise rather than read them verbatim, that would be appreciated. But first statement is from Peter Weeks on conversation clubs. So if you'd like to summarise your statement, please.
Hello, good afternoon, Chairman. Thank you for your time. My name is Peter Weeks, and I volunteer on a council programme called conversation clubs. Bristol Community Learning, which is a department under the control of this committee, runs a valuable service called conversation clubs, which help non-English speakers in Bristol, immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, to learn English, to make friends across all kinds of divides, and to integrate into the life of our city. This programme benefits hundreds of people every year at very low cost. The students who come to learn English at our conversation clubs often want to get jobs or get better jobs where being able to understand and speak English is a requirement of the job. In my statement, I gave 2 examples of this success from the hundreds of students who have passed through this programme and continue to do so. The conversation clubs are run by volunteers. The council pays for the hire of the venues and publicises the programme. At a time of great financial constraint, this kind of council-led, volunteer-staffed activity could be a model for the council to deliver other low-cost services. Thinking, for example, of business mentoring for SMEs, or career advice for young people, or perhaps people looking to change career later in their life, perhaps after they've lost a seat as a councillor. So in summary, conversation clubs are an excellent council service that deserves the support and encouragement of this committee. And finally, if you would like to see a conversation club in action, you are very welcome. We would love to see you. So my name is Peter Weeks, and I'll take any questions if that's allowable, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks for your statement, Peter. We don't do questions after statements, but we have heard and noted what you said and the work the work of the Conversations Club. So thank you for that. The next statement I have is from Suzanne. So Suzanne, would you like to summarise your statement, please?
Yes, don't worry, I'm not going to read out my article that I wrote a few years ago. But it is me going on again about family suitable housing. Because we do have a relatively young profile, that the last administration was seen to be actively promoting high-rise, high-dense developments that aren't suitable for families to live in. And now that we've got a new administration, I'm hoping there's an opportunity to reconsider that policy, and especially with the citywide family living policy that is hopefully going to come out. But in the meantime, it does look as if developers are going to try to rush through more proposals that are unsuitable for family living. So I just feel very strongly about it.
Thank you, Suzanne. And the final statement we have is from Joe Tarleton on the Baltic Wharf caravan site. So, again, if you could summarise your statement, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The developer and the council have repeatedly claimed that the Baltic Wharf site is brownfield, but the National Planning Policy Framework would require there must have been a permanent structure there. And according to the Town and Country Planning Act, if only a small part has a structure, only that part should be considered as brownfield. In fact, only 2.6% of the site has a structure, the reception area and the washroom. Previously, the site had been an orchard, then a field to store timber, and eventually it became a tree-filled caravan park. It is not, and never has been, brownfield. To mislead the planning process by making a false claim on brownfield status was clearly wrong. But to repeat this claim, to enable the council-owned developer to apply for millions of pounds from the Brownfield Land Release Fund is potentially fraudulent and should be investigated immediately.
Thank you. Okay, so that's a public forum, so thank you very much for submitting your questions and statements. now move on to item number 6, which is the Economy and Skills Policy Committee Annual Business Report 24-25. So, Amy, are you going to summarise this?
Thank you, Chair. So, pretty straightforward report here, so it's just for noting. So it's to note the membership of the Economy and Skills Policy Committee, to note the appointment of Councillor Brown as the Chair and Councillor Bartle as the Vice Chair. And then it's to note the terms of reference and the meeting dates for this municipal year. So unless anyone's got any questions, that report is for noting.
Thank you, Amy. So, unless there's any burning questions or comments to be had on that, I'll consider it noted, and we'll move on to agenda item 7, which is the We Work for Everyone Phase 3 report. Jane, can I invite you to come and present from here, and then that'll make it easier for the members on your side of the aisle to, so to speak, to see you.
Oh, I wanted to make it tricky on Rob.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for the time on the agenda today. The purpose of this report is to bring to you today a request that we can continue to hold bid negotiations to secure essential grant funding from the West of England Combined Authority for our nationally recognised and important work. We Work for Everybody, which is securing employment outcomes for people with learning difficulties and autism, not just in Bristol but across the West of England. So we've been on a bit of a journey with this programme. It started in 2017-18 when a group of us realised that people with learning difficulties and autism had some of the lowest employment outcomes. And we reckon there's about 10% of the Bristol population fall within that category. So we did a bit of deep diving. We included lots of different council teams and specialist third sector partners, people working in education, training and employment. And we built a really compelling business case, and we secured one of the last major European grants, just as the door was closing. And that funding, combined with funding from the Combined Authority, has enabled us to provide a team of specialist navigators and employment support staff that has supported, in phase 1, almost 1,500 people in that cohort, of which 707 live in Bristol. And we've managed, even through COVID, we managed to achieve 23% into paid employment. We know from our research that people with learning difficulties and autism can and do want to work. And for all of us, that's a way that we build our networks, we gain self-esteem, and we improve our economic well-being. And we wanted to make sure that this support, which is very specialist in its nature, is continued. The Special Educational Needs and Disability Code of Practice sets out nationally how young people in particular should be prepared for adult life, and that includes employment. And this has become a topic of real concern and interest. In January this year, there was a scrutiny commission into transition pathways for young people. And in February, the House of Lords held a committee into the transition from education to employment for young disabled people. And I was able to go and give some evidence from this programme. And in your pack, you will see a case study of a young man called Joe. He managed to complete a 3-year IT program, but we met Joe when he was working in a charity shop. Basically, he just could not convert his skills and talents and knowledge into a really good paid job. And with the help of a navigator, he was able to really communicate the adaptations that he would need in order to work, and there was a lot of negotiation with training providers and employers, and he managed to get the job of his dreams. So we are now, we've successfully persuaded our colleagues in the Combined Authority to back this programme for a 3rd extension. And this will bring £1.7 million to work with 700 people with a learning difficulty and autism across the west of England and in Bristol. And this will take us from January next year for another 2 years to do this excellent work. And before I move to the recommendation, I just wanted to remind everybody that this programme enables Bristol City Council to contribute to its ambitions around inclusive growth and social mobility, and it enables us to be quite proactive in tackling the discrimination against disabled people. We're helping employers diversify their workforce, and we're helping developers meet their social value commitments. So, moving to the recommendation. We are asking that the committee approves the proposal and authorises myself as the head of service, in consultation with the committee chair, to negotiate with the Combined Authority, and if we're successful, to accept and spend funding of up to 1.8 million. And that's also leading on the regional implementation and delivery of We Work for Everyone Phase 3. And we're also asking that it's noted that the Director of Adult Social Care and the Director of Education and Skills will get behind us and support the implementation of this programme in partnership with our specialist providers and employers to make sure we keep improving employment outcomes for young people and adults with learning difficulties and autism. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I've got Mark first up for questions.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm in the lot for a moment. I think the project is eminently worthy. I'm definitely going to support it. Let's clarify that now. Obviously, when a program is first developed, then you do all the study of how it's the best thing to do. You've done your quantitative testing, quality assurance, and all the rest of it. When you extend it, then you're still building very much on the first. When you go for a second extension, sometimes I worry that we don't look at lessons learned or best practice. We just carry on doing what we're doing because it was good. I'm just wondering, have we looked around elsewhere to make sure what we're doing is best practice and the very best of what we can do, and taken on board the lessons of phase 1 and 2 to make sure we're delivering the best value for not just the young people that we're helping, the disabled people that we're helping, say young people, some of them young, some of them are young at heart, the people we're helping, but also the taxpayer. Are we getting the best we can?
Yeah, thank you. There's definitely been a lot of learning through phase 1 and phase 2, and we are continuing to refine the approach. And that's making sure that whether you're a young person or you're a person of working age, that you get the right support. And we have this kind of dual track approach with navigators and then employment support workers once you were in work. And we're trying to rationalise that so that there's a single relationship. Also, our Director of Adult Social Care here has brought some contacts to us and made some introductions of other councils that have done some great work in this space, particularly for those adults with more complex needs who are being supported by adult social care teams. So we're always on the lookout for really good examples that we can learn from and build on. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Bryan and then Councillor Blake.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a few questions, but the sort of crux of it is, what happens to Joe? Does he keep having, support after he's been employed? What's the sort of journey he goes on after that? Because I wasn't clear from the paper just what happens to him, and does he continue to have the support of this programme or not?
Yeah. Once somebody comes into the WeWork programme, they are entitled to 12 months support. And for Joe, part of that support did include a lot of joint planning with his employer and his manager. And it involved finding a workplace mentor as well. So what we're doing is building around Joe some sustainable support once the team step away. So yes, it is, that's all part of the programme, that it's not an immediate withdrawal. Lots of employment support programmes, once somebody gets the job, they back off. This programme can stay alongside the person, and it's really important that they do, so that we don't see people dropping out early. And it's all about carving the work, building the support and adaptations within the workplace so that it's a successful job that sticks.
Councillor Blake.
Thank you. Thank you, Jane. It's a really interesting programme. I just, two things from me. Sort of co-design element of it. So lots of it's talking about how you work with individuals and their own journeys co-design. We're talking about more generic kind of involvement of people with learning disabilities and kind of navigating the process so it's sort of replicable and we can kind of do it again and it sort of works for individuals. So co-design. And the second one is on the employer side, do we have all the public bodies signed up to this? Because I know on North West NHS Trust we've got a massive programme around learning disabilities. And I just wonder whether or not we've got at least the public sector on side to look at being good employers, and also sort of what the wider business community.
Thank you. Yeah. In terms of co-design, that's been a core principle, and of course each participant that comes to the programme is giving us their view, and they have an individualised plan, and their voice is really key at shaping the support in the programme. And with young people, we also make sure we're in step with parents and carers as well. They are an important part of the triangle to make sure the support sticks. In terms of the employers and public bodies, in the paper we do highlight that we've just secured one of the government's 15 Workwell Vanguard partnership projects. That's another 2.9 million. That's going to be a bit of a game changer for us. That's bringing us right up close, working with the Integrated Care Partnership and all of the elements of the NHS. So yes, we have huge aspirations for how, both as a referral partner, but also as an employer, that we build this as a work and health strategy going forward. And that, of course, is a commitment with all parts of the public sector. One of the things we've been contemplating is establishing a bit of a Employers for Change network. And you heard a bit about the ESOL conversation clubs, which those have been designed to support refugee and asylum seekers. What we want to do is have this network with any employer that wishes to be make a pledge and be part of that inclusive employment and inclusive recruitment, so that we give them a bit of kudos and we enable them to learn from each other. And that network will include both public and private and third sector.
Thank you, Jane. Councillor Renner.
2 points and one question. So I think, firstly, a huge thanks to you and your team for the work that you're doing. It keeps getting funding, so it's obviously working really well. It's really important that we're doing what we can to work with people with learning disabilities to provide those opportunities for those that wish to enter the workplace. So my thanks, firstly. And just linked to that, it was good to also see in the report reference to those without a formal diagnosis, because we know just how challenging it is around backlogs of the waits for assessments, things like that. As well, I used to work closely with people with ADHD, which had a particularly sort of challenging backlog across the country and also in this area. So it's good to see that focus there as well, because we know how challenging it can be to get a diagnosis and to go through that assessment process. My question was on the Work Well Vanguard partnership. Actually, I just wondered if you wouldn't mind just explaining a bit more detail about how that's going to work in practice and what outcomes you expect that to deliver.
I'm really confident that we managed to secure one of the 15. It was a very competitive process, and I'm really certain that we managed to secure that because of the WeWork infrastructure that we already have in place and the amazing specialist partners that we have in place. So the way it's envisaged that it will work is that this will provide a similar sort of one-to-one advice, coaching, hand-holding for anybody that is out of work because of their ill health, or if they're in work, they have a job, but they just can't work because of their ill health. And it was the Integrated Care Partnership that approached us as a council and said, will you be our main delivery partner? And one of the requirements of being a Vanguard partnership is not only that you connect up with all the others, the other 14, you need to develop a partnership and develop this work and health plan. And I don't know if you were aware through the recent King's speech, there's a whole array of work and health commitments that are being made because of the concerns post-COVID of the number of people who are not able to work since the pandemic. So it will be very similar to WeWork. There will be a team of career navigator, career coaches. There will also be some very specialist services. We could see from the data the two primary health reasons why people aren't able to work is either mental ill health or it's musculoskeletal conditions. So the project and programme over the next 2 years will involve ramping up some of those very specialist health services, which is great for Bristol. And that's all about our productivity and helping people be in work.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? Councillor Ralston.
I was very pleased to see this programme and it's thriving, doing so well. I was particularly, I think, echoing what Councillor Renner said, very pleased to see that you help people who don't have that formal diagnosis. Obviously, it's a very, very long waiting time to struggle. Just one question though, just for information. You mentioned that 23% people that came through the programme were in employment during COVID. What would that be expected to be now, or what do you benchmark that figure against?
Well, the national figure is pretty rock bottom at 5.7%. And that's really what you have to take into account with the 23% achieving paid work. So now we are ambitious. We want to see that improve. And it's, that figure is obviously those that achieve paid employment. And alongside that, if you're not in paid employment, you are now actively engaging in all of that employment support. And for some people, that's quite a journey. So, yeah, for this third phase, we will be setting that target, and it will be clearly there in the business case and the partnership that's working on for the next 2 years. Thank you.
Okay, and are you indicating, Rob?
No, no.
All right.
I have some questions for that.
Can I just also come back to this question, because you two of you have mentioned the you don't need to kind of have a formal assessment to enter this programme. One of the key principles from the start was self-referral, and we're not about keeping people out of this programme, and we feel if you feel that you have learning difficulties or autism, then we will help you, it's a great thing.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jane. I think I've said this to you before. It's the economy and skills remit is extremely wide, and it's got a lot of very glamorous stuff in it, and stuff that provokes a lot of debate and across the city, rightly. And one of my concerns when I took up the role was that the skills element might get a bit lost in almost everything else, because there are so many things. So I'm really pleased that this item is, the first key decision that we've got to make as a committee. And it sort of sets a precedent for the committee. So to remind everyone, the recommendations are that we approve the proposal and authorise the Head of Service, Employment Skills and Lifelong Learning in consultation with the committee chair to negotiate with WECA, and if successful, to accept and spend funding of up to £1,835,500, including procuring and awarding contracts, and lead on to the regional implementation and delivery of the We Work for Everyone Phase 3 programme from January 2025 to March 2027, and also that we note the Director of Adult Social Care and the Director of Education and Skills will support the implementation of the We Work for Everyone programme in partnership with specialist providers and employers to improve the employment outcomes of young people and adults with learning difficulties and autism, supported by the SEND and ASC teams. So I'd like to move the report and ask one of the committee members to second.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Bartle. And we need to take a formal vote because this is a key recommendation. So can I ask for votes for the recommendations? And I don't need to ask for votes against now, do I? Because everybody's just voted for, and no abstentions. So therefore, this has passed, and you can now go about negotiating with WECA.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to the regeneration service update. And so members, you have had a copy of the slides sent to you for this. So if you'd prefer to follow on your laptops rather than on the screen, do feel free. We welcome Abigail Stafford to the chair of doom.
Hi, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Abigail Stratford. I'm the Head of Regeneration here at Bristol City Council. The paper in front of you today isn't a key decision, there's no voting required at the end. Instead, I'm simply here to provide you with an update on what was a background on the regeneration service, and then update you on some of our planned activity for the remainder of this financial year. I can't see the slide, hopefully you can, and I'll flick through at the same pace. So just a little bit about who we are. So the regeneration team was formed in June 2021. It's a multidisciplinary team. There's 12 highly skilled professionals within the team who have a range of experience across public, private and charitable sectors. We're working across a number of priority areas of growth and regeneration. The team aims to deliver good growth. In a nutshell, quite simply, as how we describe it. We do this through working with local communities, with investors, developers and council colleagues to build support for positive change and to coordinate the delivery of transformational placemaking projects within these areas. Some of those projects are delivered by colleagues within the council, but the majority are delivered by private sector partners. So how do we do this? We use a range of tools and levers to help us deliver these projects. We work in partnership and collaboratively to develop regeneration frameworks to guide and shape private sector development. We develop policies which support and enable good growth. We utilise the council's freehold ownership, particularly in the city centre, to ensure that the growth that comes forward delivers the city's requirements. And we secure investment for social and physical and community infrastructure that's required to support the planned growth. And we look outside the red lines, we think about the places in between the developments and how those places can change and evolve to make sure that we are creating vibrant places that people want to live. Often, though, transforming and changing places can be quite difficult and often complex and challenging issues are brought to the surface through the kind of conversations that we've had with the community. So, since the inception of the team, consultation and engagement activities that have been delivered by the Regeneration Service have been specifically designed to listen to the people who know the area best. We learn from past experiences of what's worked and what hasn't worked elsewhere to try and make sure that the projects that we deliver are improved and enhanced through the community consultation that takes place. Why do we do this? So there are many reasons, but I think it's important to highlight that the regeneration, the officers within the regeneration team are driven both personally and professionally to deliver good growth, which helps address the city's housing crisis and also address the kind of climate and ecological emergencies that we face. More specifically, though, we try and find all the opportunities we can to identify and deliver ways that tackle the painful and prevalent inequalities which exist within our city. We strive to find opportunities for local people, for communities, for businesses, for high streets to benefit from the growth that's coming forward in their area. And we try and find opportunities to build and create moments for community cohesion and to offer people opportunities for social mobility. Across the range of projects that we're working on at the moment, we are seeking to deliver over 1,300 new homes. We're striving to deliver employment space that could support up to 23,000 jobs and support our transition to net zero. We are also constantly striving to find opportunities to improve the public realm, the green spaces, deliver active travel and transport infrastructure, deliver community and cultural infrastructure, and ensure that health and well-being is at the core of everything that we do. So hopefully on the screen you can see some of the areas that we currently operate within. So there are a number of areas, growth and regeneration identified in the local plan, but we work in the priority areas that you can see in the screen. And in the paper we set out that we would also like to explore seeking political support and external funding to expand our work and develop a place-based regeneration approach to the transformation of Lawrence Head. In an essence, these areas that we work in cover central Bristol, central Bedminster and Temple Quarter. And over the past few years, the team has prioritised developing regeneration frameworks to guide and shape the growth that's coming forward in that area. And as well as looking, I think there's the benefit of having a regeneration team, as well as looking at taking a place-based approach to change in those areas, we also look at the impact and interdependencies of the growth across all of those areas, because they are knitted together, and those red lines may be in the local plan for the people that live there, they're very blurred boundaries, and the impact of growth can be felt across them. So in the report today, we identify some priority projects that we're looking to deliver by the end of this financial year. We've recently secured just over £250,000 from Homes in England, which combined with the regeneration services based annual budget will enable us to deliver the projects set out in the report. These projects will be delivered alongside our normal business as usual activity, again, which is clearly set out in the report. So for clarity, we've secured with our funding this year within the city centre, we hope to develop a co-living, broadened and urban family living design guide. And alongside this, we'll also develop a community and cultural space strategy and a public art plan. Within Froome Gateway, we're seeking to develop a cultural and public art plan alongside some public realm design guide, and we are going to complete a business case to test the viability and deliverability of a new use of the Wellington Road depot site should the site ever become vacant prior to its redevelopment. And it's important to say that site is currently used by the HRA. And there's no plans to change that in the short term. We are looking at options for the long term. In Bedminster Green, we're going to update the strategic transport assessment. And within White House Street, we plan to prepare a design guide for the new plaza area, because there's a number of developments coming forward around that that we need to inform and shape. And we're going to undertake a feasibility study to test if an industrial intensification project is viable, deliverable on Plot 1B within the area. And then finally, as mentioned earlier and set out in the paper, the Regeneration Service would also like to submit a funding bid to the Combined Authority to develop a regeneration framework for Lawrence Hill to guide and inform the growth that's coming forward there. And we will obviously update members of this committee later on in the year on the outcome of that funding bid if it's successful and how we plan to take that forward. So as I said at the beginning, there are no key decisions. It's simply to note the kind of summary of the work that we're undertaking with our base budget topped up by the Homes England funding, and that we'll continue to submit external funding bids because the majority of our work is externally funded, and that also we intend to submit the bids to try and develop a regeneration framework for long term. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Abby. Okay, I've got Councillor Pryor, Bernard, Wilcox.
Is it best just to ask all my questions at the same time? If I just say them, then you give my back.
Depends how many you have.
Well, 4.
Okay, go for it.
So I think firstly just a question about the sort of status of regeneration frameworks within the MPPF and local plans. Like the non-statutory, do you have some way? Can you just sort of go into that in a second? So that's one question. Second question is about the Lawrence Hill regeneration framework. Obviously, like transport is crucial to that, and at the moment, sort of there's the East Bristol Local neighbourhood which is really good, and things like managed parking are sort of like quite big aspects of that area. If you're, thinking about that, do you know how many homes are going to be built in that area, and can you plan for that at this stage, or is that probably too early to say that? Thirdly, the family living residential charge, which obviously got a sort of informed statement about it. I'm just interested in that question mark about tower blocks, livability, people's own sense of perspective around them, because if you don't give people really good access to green space, play parks, things like that, it's not a good place to bring children up. So just how we think through that is a key question, I think. I don't know whether you've got any guys, more of a comment than a question. And then fourthly, the Wellington Road thing is quite encouraging. I mean, all of this is encouraging, by the way, I should have said that at the start. But how do we guard against meanwhile sites not being used for things like car parks? Because on Wellington Road at the moment there isn't a car park, that's a really annoying car park in my view, because it's just somebody who sets it up and they charge a tenner a day or whatever it is. And that's just not getting us away from car centricity in the city centre. So are there ways that we can guard against things like that for meanwhile uses? And also obviously the elephant in the room always when we talk about meanwhile sites is things like use for van dwellers, vehicles, where we've got obviously a surplus on streets, a lot of people living in vans, living on streets. We have got some sites for meanwhile use, but they're often at capacity. Whether you consider that as a use of a site like this, or whether that's just out of the realms of this. I appreciate those two things, the car park and the vehicle dwellers meanwhile use are quite similar. But I do think that there's a difference in those two things because of the nature of what they're doing in terms of their stated purpose. And I'm not suggesting for 1 second that should become meanwhile use, but how do you think about these things and make sure that they're not, that they're well thought through and you're not rushing into like a specific use. Sorry, that's a lot.
That's okay. I'm going to try and go through them. If I forget anything, get them on, please let me know. So in terms of the status of the regeneration frameworks, when they are complete, we do a consultation and we take them through the approval process. And if they're approved by committee or previously cabinet, then they become a material consideration in the planning process. So there's something that needs to be considered as the officers assess the individual applications. And I think also it's important to say that they are very effective tool in terms of communicating to the market and investors and developers and landowners the aspirations that we hope to deliver in the area. And we've got numerous evidence of the benefits that they provide in terms of shaping developments and growth informally and softly as well as kind of forming through the planning process. In terms of Lawrence Hill, I would say it's too early to give numbers on the number of homes that we delivered there. You're right, the strategic transport is really important, and that's the reason we need to do a framework. We need to do an integrated strategic transport assessment to inform the growth proposals for the area and consider things like how the train station, the importance of the train station, connections to that, car parking, and all the other active travel aspects. So that's really why we need to do the framework, to be able to understand those things and think about them and plan the growth around them. The urban living design guidance could become policy, may not, we'll have to do the work and then bring it to the committee for you to decide. We'll look at best practice in terms of how do families live in urban settings in a way that helps them thrive, and that's really what the piece of work will do. And then finally on mean on use, I think the best way to control it is to own the land, basically. The best way, depending on what use you have, you may apply licenses or permissions. And I think that in the case of the Wellington Road depot site, the reason that we want to test whether or not the use is appropriate on that site is because that we know we have a lot of businesses in Through Gateway that may need to collect space through redevelopment that's coming forward, and we're wondering if this site could provide an opportunity in the short term for those sites to have a decamp, that they can retain decamp locations, they can stay in the area whilst they're waiting hopefully for a new permanent home on the ground floor on a new residential development. So we're taking very much an employment focus, and the reason we're doing the work is exactly as you said, to test, is that the right and most suitable use of that site, and is that viable and deliverable. So no decisions have been made, but it's doing the work to see if that is appropriate use and can be. I hope I've answered the question.
Thank you, Abby. I've got Councillor Reynard next.
I'll just start with that point. What they make is fire doors at that site, and there's a significant need for fire doors to be fitted across capital housing. So it's one of those examples of tensions of something that we need to make sure we're thinking about the current issues that need to be addressed within the existing stock as well, and just kind of keep an eye on that. I think it's the first thing I'd say, and thank you for updating the paper with reference to that. I think secondly, I just wanted to thank you and the team, because since the regeneration team's come in, look at how much progress we've made across so many areas of regeneration across the city. It's been fantastic to see, and it's not been without its challenges, it would be fair to say. So I just really want to pass my thanks on, because it's been really good progress, and we're already thinking about what those next areas that they could be, and we've seen that tangible progress and that learning being embedded, and several master plan frameworks come through the cabinet. So really pleased that, and I hope that under the new ways of working and the new administration will continue to see that progress and that pace moving forward. So those are my comments. So just turning to my questions, I had a couple. One is around Western Harbour, and how is that going? What are the next, just a bit more detail on the next stage of how that's going to move forward, what we can expect to see, to have to consider potentially here at the committee. Would be useful just to unpick. Obviously, I know it's an item of significant public interest. And then my second question is on health infrastructure. So I see infrastructure referenced, but the one thing I didn't see explicitly referenced was around health infrastructure, and I'm obviously aware there's work happening elsewhere in the council with health colleagues to look at what's the health infrastructure, the dentists, the doctors' places that we also need to be making sure we're bringing forward as part of regeneration. It's one of the ways that we can make sure we have that buy-in from the wider public, ensuring that we're addressing those infrastructure pressures, which the problem's already there in the sense of 14 years Tory government, all of the challenges that has brought with dentists and the NHS, but we need to make sure that if we're going to get homes built and bring the public on side, that we do address that. And so it's useful to know how that work's going to come forwards, because I'm aware that NHS and you're looking at mapping your housing coming forward, where health need is, and what's the next steps for that. So those are my two questions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Thanks for your kind words, I appreciate it. In terms of Western Harbour, we have appointed a multidisciplinary master plan team, and they are currently undertaking a huge amount of work looking getting all the surveys undertaken and doing the site analysis. We hope to be able to go out to public consultation in the autumn with an update. Thereafter, as the master plan progresses, we intend to bring it back to committee for approval, probably in the spring next year. So that work is underway and on track. In terms of the health infrastructure, I think we've been really lucky in our team, this is specifically around health impact assessments, that we've had an incredible researcher from Trude in the team for the last 4 years, who has led on the health impact assessment. So we've undertaken those, and we've just done one for Western Harbour, Freedom Gateway and other areas. So, as I said, health and wellbeing is embedded in everything we do from the outset. We have regular conversations with health colleagues around the provision that we need to have within the local area based on the evidence that we've gathered through the development framework and the consultation. As you know, it's not always that easy to secure its delivery, and we also work very collaboratively with planning colleagues who have those more strategic conversations around provision to try and secure the provision, the local provision that's needed. And we've had some successes, you know, Bedminster, we've had in pharmacy, we're working hard in terms of making sure we get the right provision of the GP services in the city centre. So it's always there, and it's always part of the kind of focus, but it's not within our gift to ensure it's delivered. As I said, lots of it at a strategic level is led through planning colleagues.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think it's just on the health piece. I think the bit I worry about is the homes arrive and then health sort out the health facilities after the homes have arrived. So I think it's a plea as much for health colleagues who obviously aren't in the room to make sure that they work sort of with us at the pace that we're working at to make sure we get the health infrastructure. Obviously there's the bit about allocating the land for health, who pays for its building, but then can the health system obviously staff those facilities that then come forward. Obviously some bits we've got more influence and ability to influence than other bits, but it's just I want to make sure we keep on our radar, because I think it's a big concern for residents.
It's always coming up in public consultations.
I've got Councillor Walcott next, but I'm just going to pick up on what you said there about Western Harbour, because I think that's one of the areas, maybe ahead of the consultation, where we arrange a briefing for members. But just a reminder to members that if you do feel like there's areas where you could do with additional briefings, do let me know, and they can, I'm sure, always be arranged. Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Abigail, for your report. I'm interested to know how you managed to do so much for so relatively little pounds. I'm used to outline and full business cases for projects costing hundreds of thousands of pounds, and yet you're delivering 10 separate things here for your 410 grand. So I'm really interested to know how you're doing it and whether you think it's a good use of resources to deliver this money for this amount of cash.
So in terms of the way that the regeneration service works, often we are working collaboratively with colleagues who deliver lots of the projects themselves. So as I said, and some of them are delivered by private sector partners. So for example, in Bedminster, we're working collaboratively there, but the strategic transport is being delivered by colleagues in the transport team, using CRSDS funding, and a similar position in the city centre. So often we are helping to shape growth, but we're not delivering it ourselves, and therefore the budget line doesn't sit necessarily with us. In terms of the Homes England funding that we've secured, we believe that this is a really effective use of the funding because it allows us to accelerate delivery, because we can test concepts and ideas, and we can progress policy documents or guidance that we know is needed to help shape the developments that come forward. So yes, we think it is a good use of public spend funding, and we think we can do it within the budget envelope and we can do it efficiently.
Thank you. I have one more question. So things like the city living design and the city centre cultural space and public art plan sound like good sources for the beginnings of the practice notes or SPDs. Are you already allotting them to be SPDs, possible SPDs?
So we will do the work and do the thinking and pull it together, and then we'll work with colleagues in planning and through the committee to consider whether they should come forward as SPDs, and if they do, and that's the decision that's taken, then they will come back here for consideration and approval. So there will be drafted in such a way that they could become that if there was both officer and member support for that and it was felt appropriate.
Those conversations, that's a conversation we've already had as well. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, and sorry I missed your start of your report. So two things for me. I wonder about the sort of big housing developments that are outside of these areas. So I've got something in Hillfields, for instance, it's going to be like 5,000 homes. And already, there's 3 parcels of land there, and already we've got the developer putting an application in, we've got the health service putting in like their not objections, but sort of support for health provision. So and that hasn't quite, we haven't quite coordinated that in a sense. So I wonder what about the sort of the stuff that's just outside of the areas that you're talking about. And are you able to reach out and support at all those particular programs? And the second part to me is when disabled people. And I'll bore you, 25 years ago I was chair of the Regeneration Committee on the council, and we had a scheme for the change of the centre. And Peter Abrams, who's passed away now, the long-standing councillor, he had a disability where he struggled to walk, and he talked about, give us a chapter and verse about why the city centre proposals were difficult for him. And we had disabled routes across it, but not all of it was. It was cobbled that we still got. Of course, I was chair of Regeneration and passed the plans it was. Roll on a number of years, and I'm disabled now. I thought, I wish we listened to it a bit more, because it's a bloody nightmare getting across the centre in a wheelchair. So my question is, and it's a long intro to the question, is some great stuff here about disabled people, but it's written by the equalities teams. I wonder, how do you integrate that? How do you make sure that your officers, when you're shaping these big programmes, it's really important for the city, are really putting disabled people front and central into these plans?
Thank you. So in terms of the areas that don't sit within the areas of growth and regen that we work in, the majority of those areas are picked up by the housing delivery team. So they work to kind of look at those sites and support those applications and think about and they lead some of the more kind of community-led regeneration projects. So I can pick that up with colleagues in the housing delivery team. And the point around accessibility and how we consider that is really well made. And I think that it's fair to say that we need to continually try and get better at that. We're not perfect. But we do work quite collaboratively with Wessel, who do kind of audits of our framework. So they've done an audit of the Gateway framework, we've done an audit of the city centre framework, and we often bring them in to do bespoke pieces of analysis and review on specific proposals. But I think it's a really good point and a good challenge and something that we need to continually reflect on to think how we can do better and how we can get those voices and viewpoints into the planning as early as possible.
Okay. Councillor Bartle and then Councillor Ross.
Yeah, I think I agree with Kelvin. Like I've seen in this is sort of leading into my question, I've seen in the public consultations for Broome Gateway where a disabled person has like come and said, oh, I managed to get here, just about. But equally the team spoke to that person and they were really helpful and they were like, oh, we will try and improve this. So yeah, I think there's definitely a journey that's occurring. But my point is sort of related to that, which is when you've got 10 of these master plans or whatever we're doing, which is obviously a great ambition, the level of public engagement and the level of member engagement isn't something that feels guaranteed. It feels like there could be way more in this one over here because, I don't know, maybe Andrew and I tell you, oh, this one's really important, and then another one sort of doesn't get as much focus. And I kind of feel like our current working processes are like, just do what is sensible. And so far that has been working, like under the previous administration. I think that the shift in how this area has been handled has been like markedly improved. But I don't know whether there's something a bit more formal that we need to kind of, or whether that does exist and I've just not read it. Like, what are our agreements about what a master plan has in it and what you have to do? How do we, as a committee, measure the value of your work before it's delivered on the ground? So I think that's my main point, and I did have a second point, which is relating to the housing delivery team as well. I think, like, conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago, and the point that Kelvin's just made, I think I need a bit more context about the alignment that is created between your team and the housing delivery team, which perhaps is a team that I should know more about, given that they have a similar purview to a lot of the work that you're doing. So yeah, how do you work with that team? How do we, as a council, make sure we're aligned? That's the question.
Okay, so in terms of alignment, we all work under John Smith, so the Director of Growth and Regeneration. So all of our projects are governed through the governance structure under John, so that the directors make sure that there's alignment. So that's kind of how it works in a formal level. Informally, obviously, I work very closely with colleagues in housing delivery. I used to run the team. That was my job before I did this one, so I know them personally very well and work really collaboratively with them. So that's, I guess, in a nutshell, how we do it. In terms of making sure we kind of understand the measure and value of our work, I think that's something we can take away and think about and reflect upon and develop a co-produce and develop a proposal on that. So I think it's a really valid question that there isn't necessarily a formal answer to at the moment, but we can work really on that.
I'll just say as a follow-up, I don't know whether we need that. I think it's a question for other people to comment on, because I'm quite happy with how you've been performing, but I'm like on the inside now, so people who are not the chair or vice chair might feel differently, so yeah.
Okay, just before I bring in Councillor Roxton, I was just going to pick up on something Councillor Bartle said about the balance of briefings on different areas, because I think again, for context, Jenny and I have been briefed within an inch of our lives over the past couple of months, and a lot of those briefings have been from Abby. But we are keen to ensure that the rest of the committee members, and we're relevant, all members across council can get briefed on updates, whether significant updates to be had, which was one of the purposes for bringing this briefing to this meeting today, was to give you an overview on that. But again, if you feel like there's some areas of the regen brief that you want to know more about, let us know and we can look at briefings. Councillor Roxton.
Yeah, I would second that for sure, that I think it'd be good for members of this committee to be involved in more of the briefings, just to get up to speed, because obviously very exciting things are happening. The presentation I thought was really impressive and to be welcome, but I suppose we do need to know more of the nitty-gritty as it progresses, because there's so much going on. But going from the macro to the micro, if you like, I was very encouraged to see that you're going to have a co-living design guide and you're working on that. So my first question was, what progress is being made? It's probably very early days, I know. Secondly, will it include minimum space standards around that? So and also what has been the impetus for it? Because I think we'll see more of this sort of accommodation coming down the track, and having seen examples cited elsewhere, in London and the rest of it, it often needs very poor quality accommodation for residents, cramming really, if you like, quasi-student accommodation, but for so-called professionals. So I think we've really got to watch out for that. I think we had a recent permission, didn't we, for co-living, so yeah, I'm glad to see it, but just would like to know more about it. And speaking, one more question. Just getting back, just want to clarify about the frameworks. They are not SPDs, are they, at the moment? So Bedminster Green is not an SPD, you understand it. So I'd just be interested to know, from just a technical point of view, how those have teeth if they're not. Thanks.
Okay, so on the co-living...
Could you speak into the microphone?
Yes, of course, sorry. On the co-living, I think the analysis is completely right. We've had a number of applications. We envisage that there will be, because of current market conditions, we envisage that there will be more, potentially some more applications for co-living, particularly within the city centre. And we want to learn the lessons from where co-living is being delivered elsewhere in the country and make sure that we get the very best quality homes for our residents. So what we want to do through the co-living policy is look at best practice and identify the best possible quality co-living homes that can be delivered to the centre. So that work is, as I said, we've just secured the Homes England funding to do that work. We are literally just at the stage of procuring a practice to do that for us. No work has actually commenced yet. So it's very early stages. And in terms of, I can pass over to my esteemed planning colleagues on the teeth of the framework. So as I said, they're material considerations. So they're something that planning officers have to consider in the balance of making planning decisions. But again, I would just like to highlight that I think as well as their formal planning status, what they really do effectively is talk to the community and talk to the market about the type of place that we want to create. And from the outset, when someone's looking to buy a piece of land, they have a really clear understanding about what the council aspires and what the community aspires to deliver there. So they also have really, they have informal power as well as the kind of formal status through the planning process.
Thank you for that. Just to follow up very quickly on co-living, I just wondered if it is now a statutory requirement to have a minimum space standard in private co-living. I'm not sure it is, but that's what the concern was a few years ago, I think, with these schemes.
So I have to be honest, I don't know the answer to that, but I can find out and let you know. Minimum space standard for co-living, looking at my colleagues,
I don't think they do, but I'm not too sure either, I must admit.
We'll take that away from
but it will clearly be addressed, you know, if a co-living scheme comes to committee, because also national policy might well move. Again, you know, indeed.
I've got Councillor Renard.
Follow-up question relating to co-living and affordable housing. And do we also need, is co-living covered by the existing affordable housing policies? Does it need its own bespoke one, like build to rent needs its own bespoke one?
Just to respond, that clearly in the new local plan we're trying to address these things, which goes back to what we were saying earlier, that we need a new local plan adopted sooner rather than later.
I don't dispute that, but the co-living bit, I don't think we went into the detail of doing the local plans thing. I just want to understand its status. From build to rent, for example, you need separate for the house, plus the same compared to the student accommodation. So I was just interested in clarifying. If we don't know, that's fine. We need to take it away. But with co-living, does it also need its own separate policy, or is it covered by the existing city-wide ones that are in that local plan? I just worry about that falling through the gap and us coming forward and just having very little mechanisms to then be able to make represented in that affordable housing.
Thanks for that. It sounds like you're volunteering for the local plan working group as well, Tom. Okay, are there any more comments or questions on this item? No. Okay, so we are asked to note the planned activity in the regeneration service as outlined in the report, including the 260,000 Homes England funding to deliver priority projects within the Bedminster Green, White House Street, Froome Gateway and the city centre. And also note the regeneration service will be submitting external funding bids to deliver projects identified with the city service development and delivery plan, Froome Gateway framework, the White House Street framework, Bedminster Green framework, and the emerging harbour place strategy. So, unless anybody demurs, we can consider that noted. And I did suggest that we'd have a comfort break after this item at outset, so let us do that for 5 minutes if possible, starting now.
It's not the... It's actually my wife's 40th birthday class. Yeah. Weston Court, who was delighted that I called Granny Ass rather than Dr. Peacock.
Yeah, so it sounds like my former housemates.
Oh. In case anyone's interested, by the way, Britain did the gold.
We've got two
golds and one bronze as well.
And we won silver earlier on.
Oh, yes, we did.
And the men's gymnastics starts at 4:30. So. I mean, that's happening as well.
Apparently, Forbes had one.
To answer your question, is I don't know when we
Apparently now. But all the evidence is a little bit.
That one done a little bit, yeah.
That one, that's what we're getting like parallel, which is really key. There's a lot of
start again before everyone's back. It has been 5 minutes.
Ice cream somewhere? Yeah, I just have the ice cream.
You just know you're supposed to be waiting when the ice cream van is shot down.
It's just starting now, by the way, you're extra read.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, welcome back. And we move on to agenda item 9, which is a paper on the establishment of a local plan working group, and Simone Welding is here to present the report.
Indeed, and it's a fairly short report. It's about the re-establishment of the local plan working group to help us in making sure we can provide timely responses to the planning inspector, which doesn't allow sort of month-long, 2 months long decision pathways for committees, and hence the need for an informal local plan working group, which we recommend should also reflect political balance of the overall council and to be chaired by the chair of this committee, but otherwise to be worked out by the party leads group, by the party leads in terms of who to actually sit on the committee. That's the recommendation.
Okay, thanks Simone. Are there any questions on this? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a really basic question. Do DC committee members, are they able to be on the local plan working group? I assume the answer is yes. Thanks. I do just have a general question as well, sorry, a quick one, which is, there was some questioning about why the meetings are held in private, or at least not in a way that the public can interact with them. Can we just talk that through for a second, because I don't quite understand what the thinking is behind that. I understand there's been a bit of thinking about it, but just explain it, just so that we all sort of have an understanding of that thing.
Well, the main reason is because there is an examination in public going on in parallel, and that is where the public exchange needs to happen around, you know, where the public can express what the council should be progressing. I think it's important that the council also has an opportunity to discuss the different options without being sought to be influenced by other pressure groups, and just to have that safe space where officers can just talk through different options before the approach is formulated, to then feed into that public examination. And I think otherwise there would just also arise confusion if you have basically 2 forums where that sort of public debate is being had about it.
Thanks, Simone. Councillor Weston.
I agree entirely with what's just been said. I would also say that a lot of the conversations in public, what a lot of this is doing is the council preparing its arguments in the light of external pressure from like developers that want to build on the shiny new field, for example, in my neck of the woods. So you were reading our arguments. If we start to have those arguments in public, you're giving the people who we don't necessarily agree with insight into what our proposals and defences and everything else are, which makes us legally, I don't know, weaker when it comes to the actual process itself. There has to be a safe space. That's why the discussions are in private, but the consultations in public.
Just to clarify, you said I knew the answer to the question. I was asking the question for the purposes of asking the question.
Councillor Wilcox and then Councillor Renner.
Thank you, Chair. I know that the terms of reference don't state who this committee actually reports to. It might be useful to say whether it comes back to this committee or whether it goes straight to full council like it did previously. Also, it doesn't give any timelines about how long you're going to be running the working group, because it could be quite open-ended when actually it needs to be quite closed at a proper time frame.
Good point, yes. I suppose we had certainly seen it as reporting to this committee. And in terms of timeline, the adoption of the local plan, which, you know, we still expect to be early next year, although with the planning inspectorate having taken longer so far, it's getting increasingly a bit optimistic whether spring next year is still achievable.
So I would like it to be quite clear in terms of reference. It does actually have to report back something in that time frame, because I think it would be useful. Because the group might decide not to. I don't know.
Can I pick up on that? So the emendations, so the monthly public examination, so there's the local, in the short term, the local plan working group will look at the council's responses to the questions, and that it come from the planning inspectorate ahead of those being submitted. I'm not so there may be scope for there to be a report back in terms of what has been submitted. The plan is that when the local plan comes back to us from the inspectorate with suggested emendations, that comes to this committee prior to then going to full council. So the local plan will have this committee will have oversight of the local plan. The local plan working group has oversight of the interaction in the short term with the planning inspectorate. I'm not sure, and this is a question. My thought was that the local plan working group might be more open-ended, in as far as once the local plan is in place, there will still be work to be done, potentially on practice notes and possibly supplementary policy documents, which would come back through this chamber, this committee, but possibly, or we might have to stand up a different committee, and maybe I've just got myself a bit confused.
Well, the possibility is there, but to an extent it's a bit early to say, and I wonder whether we just revisit that next year, once, whether it would make more sense to carry on with utilising the group to also, for either supplementary guidance production to oversee that, or, you could also see a scenario where if we needed to review the local plan again very quickly, or if input was required to a joint spatial document to be produced with neighbours, there's a number of different options, but it seems a bit futile to try and speculate too much at this point.
Fair enough. Right, so I had Councillor Renner next.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things, isn't there? There's things about timelines, things about transparency coming up from colleagues. I think we could probably just add something into the terms of reference to say that, you know, the timelines for it are until the conclusion of the local plan is adopted, at which point we will review the purpose of the group and its function. And that will kind of, Council will got some assurance there is a timeline, but also one that leaves it open in case there's a need to use it in a different way going forward. Being our first suggestion. I think also just on, I think it's important that we do have that informal space to be able to discuss things, and we're not fettering all of our discretion in trying to defend our local plan through this process, which, bear in mind, we're also trying to defend things like affordable housing targets and maximising things like that through that, and many of the representations that will be coming forward will not be happy with what we're trying to do as a level tip lower. So, you know, it's important we do have those spaces to kind of look how we can robustly defend some of those things. But perhaps what could come as a standing item to this committee is perhaps just a summary update of progress. So that it needs to be like a detailed one of everything that was said, but perhaps just some of the key items and how things are going, and it might be quite useful for purposes of transparency.
Thank you, and that's useful. I thought it's also worth noting that the timelines in terms of committee meetings and you know, it means there's only a couple of committee meetings anyway. Councillor Austin.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that we have some method of local plan working groups obviously held as it is, as we were discussing, as an informal group, because the whole point is we have to expedite decisions very fast. It's got to be a quick response, but there may be some way of making it more transparent, or at least giving something in terms of an outline or update. I think that's right. So I was just thinking of that mechanism. I mean, we have other working groups across the council. This isn't new, is it? Their terms of reference, I assume, includes some sort of reporting back. There may be a way round this that's offering something but isn't impeding what we do in the function of the group. And as I say, it's got to be snappy, hasn't it? Really, it's got to respond quick.
Councillor Wilcox.
One last quick question, Chair. The local plan working group is not using up one of the 2 task and finish group allocations.
No, it is not. Okay, so the recommendation is that we endorse the establishment of an informal cross-party local plan working group in principle in accordance with the terms of reference as set out in Appendix A, but as we heard and was suggested, that we make that time bound by the local plan process, and then revisit whatever arrangements need to be put in place going forward. And we seek to have updates to this committee for the subsequent meetings on what has been on what has been put forward to as an output from that working group, and I shall also do informal updates to members as well. I know four of us were on the previous iteration of the local plan working group. We may end up on it again, and other members of the committee will also be welcome to join it, but I guess that's up to their whips and or leaders of their groups. Okay. So if we agree, are we happy to agree with those 2 caveats with regards to time? Okay, brilliant, thank you very much. Which moves us on to the corporate risk management report for Q1. I don't have, this is where who's presenting this? Is that you? Because Joaquin's not with us.
I'm happy to do it, Chair, as best I can.
Okay, and if you want to come down to the seat of doom. So that's what it's officially called.
Okay, so the paper is prepared and tabled by our risk and assurance colleagues, but they're not here today. So just to summarise, the Council has a risk and assurance framework that enables services and then the directorates to build their own understanding of their risk profiles, and then that builds into a corporate approach where our corporate leadership board and of course members are able to have sight of risks with a particular focus on those that represent the greatest risks to the organisation and the city. That's constant, that's an iterative exercise throughout the year, and of course an opportunity for continual improvement in how things are reported. This paper identifies 2 high threat risks, and they are also risks that have remained static for 3 consecutive quarters. So the first is the emergency planning and response team, or the EPRT, and then planning and development management. So there's appendices as well where the profiles are provided in more detail, with a description of controls, particularly in the case of the emergency planning and response team, and with more the planning and development management paper, the appendix for that. We have not been able to provide as much detail on this occasion, but there's much more substantive information coming to a future meeting, not least in relation to the fact the council, part of the council's caseload was designated earlier in the year anyway. So there's a discussion on that coming. So I'm happy to try and answer questions on both of them. And in relation to planning, my colleague Simone, the Chief Planner, is also able to answer questions.
Okay, and Councillor Bernard.
So, firstly, to take appreciate some needs to be taken away, it's our ability to respond to emergencies. I suppose the question we need to go back to colleagues is have we got enough resource to be able to respond in an emergency? It's obviously quite a small team that we're a brilliant team who do exceptional work in various emergencies that have happened over the last few years. But have we got enough in there? Is it resilient enough as a team, and what else needs to be put in place? So a lot of the actions are around things like learning packages, planning and so on, but I think that resource question, which recognises challenging financial environment for the council at the moment, obviously we need to be able to respond to emergencies, be able to stand up that resource, draw on that resource effectively. So we're interested to understand within the core team whether there's enough resource there, and then is there enough resource that we're able to draw upon at the appropriate time to put into the response structure. So that's the first, isn't necessarily need an answer now, it needs to be taken away, and I might just receive that as a follow-up in writing. On the planning backlog, and I also just wanted to kind of just clarify things. I think there's a huge amount of work to be done to clear this. I think I was just looking at the slides that were sent through separately from the papers, and just wanted to check. So the unallocated applications backlog, by March you cut it by about 2/3, and in the June figures it's about 95% cleared, and now the focus is now on trying to clear the backlog of applications over 26 weeks. I just wondered if you wanted to share any further update of how it's going now. We're into July, I know not quite through July.
So on your first question, yes, I can get the service to provide written feedback, but just I can also provide some reflections as well. So we don't. It is a small, very, very effective team. I have to say, I've worked in other organisations, and this is an excellent example of a team in this space. The way we work is that we have is part of a nationally accepted approach to responding to emergencies, and that includes working with our other organisational partners, including emergency services and others. And so we have a strategic level response, which tends to be directors and executive directors, and then we have tactical and in which that role, which is much more close to the detail of an emerging incident, that role is currently provided by the service that you referred to. That's not uncommon. I think some of the controls referred to in the paper are about growing the breadth and depth and resilience and preparedness of the strategic level capacity, and ensuring that there's complete consistency across the participation in that. I understand that there is likely to be a call for more resources on top of these other measures, and of course that will be part of the budget process that the organisation will embark on. On planning, there has been an enormous amount of work from quite a difficult position, as has been well documented, but I'm quite happy to allow Simone to talk through some of the activity, which we will of course come back to in future meetings as well.
Yeah, so the first thing is to say we are where we expect it to be, and basically with regards to unallocated applications is one of the key things that we've been monitoring, where we currently have about 2 weeks worth of unallocated, but all of them are basically 3 weeks old or less, or younger, so to speak, which actually is much better than we've been for many years, actually, even before the backlog started, because I think one of the problems before then was, even before we got into a backlog situation, the service wasn't brilliant, and the key thing that we're working towards now is really get towards this much better sustainable position where we actually can deliver good service. And as part of this, actually one thing that I did notice was when I wrote the risk blurb some time ago, we put the 0 unallocated applications, but that's actually impossible because you will always have at least a week's worth of unallocated. While they're being validated, they can't be allocated, so to speak, or we'll be shadow allocating them in future, but not properly. So, and hence why in some of the slides you'll see basically going forwards we always expect to have about 40 or so unallocated applications. That's just because of how it works. So yeah, we are, where we expect it to be. We're continuing to make good progress. I'm particularly also glad to report that in terms of the sort of capacity and resilience in the team, we're in a much better place of having recruited lots of people, where we've also now managed to start grow our own, and where many of the graduates that we recruited last year have made excellent progress and been able to progress into more senior positions. So yeah, we're actually, we've definitely turned the worst corner. But in terms of the overall picture, in terms of getting to a good, clean service, there's still further work to be done. But we are, we're tracking against what we said we would be doing.
Thank you, Simone. I had Councillor Weston and then Councillor Blake.
Thank you. Mine's just a question in relation to things Appendix A1. CRR 12, ability to prepare and respond to emergencies, incidents, that one. My nan always used to say prevention is better than cure. The mitigations we're putting in seem to be reducing the impact, but having no impact at all on the likelihood of an event happening. Would it not be better to try and stop the likelihood of an event happening, therefore you have no impact to mitigate against at all? So I'm just wondering what work we're doing to try and reduce the likelihood of a major incident. Are we working with partners, that kind of thing? I'd just like a comment on that, if that's possible.
So I'll try. So I think, we are a city with a higher than average incidence of protests and incidents and challenges, as we know. I think that some of that will be, I suppose there are always upstream preventative measures that the council and its partners can take, I would say that they're often quite complicated and very long term, and the connections to the interventions you take and then the outcomes would be probably quite indirect. So the focus, I think, is about being improving the likelihood of being better prepared. And we have some of the measures that are detailed in the paper and that I summarised before around the scope of the officers being brought in, the greater consistency around business impact and business continuity. That in particular is a way of being able to consider it likelihood. Is part of an action plan being sponsored by the Council's Chief Executive. I think in terms of can we reduce the incidence of events, that's quite a challenging outcome to reach, although I think generally as an organisation we ought to be in the business of prevention, of course.
Thank you, Councillor Blake.
I mean, I think probably this is one of the most important things we're dealing with today, actually, right, in terms of risk management and around how the city is prepared to deal with any emergencies that happen in the city. And at the moment, we're reporting that we haven't got that resource exactly how we want it, both from a sort of training perspective, but also the fact that the team hasn't got enough resources to handle it should a number of emergencies happen. So I guess the question for me is that, okay, we've got a plan in place to kind of get us into that position, but what happens to them? Do we have the sort of ability to pull resource from various teams to kind of focus on this, to make sure we're safe today? And I think that's, for me, it's great we've got all these plans in place. I'm comfortable with the sort of trajectory of this, but I'm just thinking about today or tomorrow, and how we respond to it. And I have absolutely no doubt we would respond to it, and we would respond to it well. So I don't want to sort of panic us, right? But I just want us within this, when we're considering it, that we kind of understand what that emergency response would be within the council to major incidents that might happen before we've got all this in place.
What I don't want to portray as an organisation that doesn't have a plan and doesn't have the resources. There are very well developed plans here and structures for that, and those of us that are on the strategic rota, I've been in the organisation about a year, and I've had the fortune to be on duty, I think 3 times so far. I've been on training, I've been part of exercises, and I've been very well supported by the service when something's happened while I've been on duty. So I think there is a depth here. I think what the service is highlighting is it's a risk that the council ought to be aware of, being able to be aware of where there could be gaps around the resilience of the team, and how returning to the strategic and the tactical groups, ensuring that there's greater depth there, and that all directors, for example, are on the strategic rota, and the ability to bring in heads of service, which are part of the organisation below directors, onto the tactical group to have greater resilience there.
I mean, I think that's great. I think it just needs to be included in this to reassure the public and what have you, given this a public document, that there are plans in place alongside your action, with sort of more strategic action.
Describe existing arrangements. Yeah.
John.
Thanks, Chair. It's really important.
There we go. Best laid plans. No, thanks, Chair. I think it's a really important issue, an important line of questioning. So perhaps we'll pick up PCCB with you, whether we could bring a briefing a bit more about what the team actually does and how it interfaces with the rest of the council. Because the fundamental model council is, as you know, that it's a fairly small team who immediately bring in the experts from elsewhere. As happened already, most notably recently in COVID, but also other things recently like Barn House and other things. But I think getting it, because as Alex has said, there's some work going on. The new chief executive has had a review of this. He's got a lot of experience in this, as you can imagine, so he's brought some ideas and some suggestions. So he's doing some work. So perhaps off the back of that, come and update you, but not just on that, but also more widely on what the team does and how it works with the rest of the council and partners.
Yeah, it would be good to, because again, this is one of those areas where Jenny and I have had a number of briefings, but we need to get those to other committee members. Also, as part of the induction, there is the opportunity to go down to the operations centre, which if you haven't done it, it's fascinating. I think there's one more opportunity to go, but again, possibly something that we could arrange as a committee as well. David.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at page 73, where the risk is detailed, it talks about something called the Corporate Resilience Group. Who's on that, and who does it report to, please?
Bear with me. Did you say page 73?
Yes.
Of the overall pack?
Yeah, sorry, of the overall pack. So it's to do with the CR12 risk, obviously.
Is it on the cover page?
It's in the appendix A1.
Yeah, I think that's just really that team works with operation, but we'll have to go back to you. I think it's something that Dawn chairs that works with it, unless it's a partner group. I'm not sure. Well, can we go back to you, Chair, of that?
Yeah, we can. If we need to get back to, can I just say, my previous practice when I was chair of audit was when questions are asked in public meeting, and we have to get back to members in writing, and those also get passed back and published in the next agenda, so that so they are part of the public record. But yeah, if we can get an answer to Councillor Wilcox and the rest of us, that'd be great.
And I was going to ask a question with my audit hat on, because I'm actually on audit committee, about the corporate emergency exercise that's scheduled for September. Will we actually get to see the results of that exercise and any changes that will be result to the emergency plan as a result of it, please? Would that come to this committee, or would it go to the audit?
Should we include that in the briefing?
Okay, any more questions or comments on the Councillor Bragger?
Sorry, I'm jumping back to planning again. So this hallowed moment where we might be de-designated, what will that allow us to do? I mean, obviously there won't be that ability for applicants to go to PINs for the planning inspectorate. But in terms of the practices, do you think? Sorry. Call to committee.
So the big one I've got, if it goes straight to planning department, I can't call it to committee.
Sure.
So if a planning application comes in and I absolutely detest, I can't call it to committee because it's gone to the inspector.
Yeah.
That ability to put it back into our hands.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I'm jumping in, but that's
so that's one thing. Okay, but are there any other sort of serious practical ramifications? Does it mean you'll be able to recruit more, for instance, things like that? Does that make a difference or not?
Well, the other key difference is that actually it's a lot easier for us to administer, in that it's a simply practical thing that because the applications don't come through the planning portal and the setup isn't there, it's just a much heavier manual overhead for us, so that's quite a drain. The other thing is we'll get the fees again. At the moment we don't get the fees, so that's another really important consideration. And then thirdly, just having, being able to influence much more in terms of also doing pre-up and then during the applications, guiding the applicants towards a positive outcome. I think that is clearly the most important thing.
Just, if I may add, I suppose to the benefit of the notes, we were designated in relation to one particular proportion of our caseload which is non-major applications, so not householders, not wages, and there have been a handful of applications submitted directly to the inspectorate. Some of them have been refused, so it's not a significant number.
That's a quick follow-up question, which is then, as a result of the designation, will the corporate risk will come down just substantially as a result of that on that register, or is that a different analysis or evaluation you do?
I think in relation to the development management service and the risk register, I think that it will be that and more, having got more risk controls in place on the basis of the very significant improvement that's been introduced to the service in the last year, 18 months, and the lessons we've learned from that.
Shall I just add that? So I think the risk will go down, but not directly because of the de-designation, but I suppose because we're improving the service, we're massively improving the service, which we need to do for both reasons, to lower the corporate risk, but also to achieve the de-designation. And because we're improving the service, it's going down, not because we achieve, I suppose, the two just go hand in hand, but yeah.
Councillor Ogden.
Stay on planning. I think it's very impressive to turn around and all the work we put in there, incredible really, considering where we have been. I just was wondering whether you thought, in light of the government's announcement this week, that we may be able to boost our numbers of officers, planning officers even further. I mean, what's your target for growing the team? That's a little bit, that question's a bit difficult to answer, I know. But is there an ambition to grow the team further? Because we, of course, we had a quite small team at one point, planning officers.
So with the announcement so far made, I don't think that there'll be that much more resource that would actually enable us to grow the team further. Having said that, even one or two, just being, so the key decisions that we're currently facing is that we've got a small number, in fact 3, very good agency workers still working for us at the moment. What I'm toying with is, should we let them go as their current contract finishes, or should we expand them by even just like a couple of months or so, and maybe not all, but some. But the finances are so tight that even those small extensions are difficult unless there is announcement soon that there will be more money that would cover it. But so, it's a very finely balanced question at the moment.
I mean, more of a comment I just make is obviously this one of the big historic issues. Obviously, there's the recruitment freeze and the churn in terms of staff leaving and unable to recruit. But the historic problem's been the planning fees as well that can be charged, which were set nationally and for 5 years, something like that, were frozen. And even when they did sort of a relatively significant uplift, it wasn't even then to cover what is actually the cost of running a planning service. Obviously, depending on how many applications you're getting through, I think it's just worth reminding ourselves of that. There's multiple levers that probably need to be looked at nationally and locally. I think the other thing is, because this designation was so specific, I just wondered if it might be worth just explaining just what the designation specifically relates to, just for committee members that weren't here previously, and also the public, just what it exactly related to, I think would be helpful. A lot of major applications that come forward often come forward with additional resource, don't they? I know it's a bit ad hoc, but often there's planning performance agreements and things like that put in place, isn't there?
Yeah, so the situation with regarding to fees has improved a lot as of last December, because that's when the fees were significantly increased by 35% for majors and 25% for non-majors, if I remember correctly. But also it introduced an automatic inflation link. So this scenario that you've described, that they could stay the same for a number of years, that won't happen again. So that's definitely much better. However, what hasn't happened is that there is still some types of applications which attract no fee, or where the fee is very low. and often doesn't necessarily reflect the complexity and the amount of resource that you need to put in to get it right. So for conditions, for example, or lots of the prior approvals, they're very low fee, but often can still be highly controversial, very complex, and therefore those are the difficult ones for us too. And where we are, you know, we have made progress and changed things so that we can deal them more within their sort of time budget envelope. But there are, just to recognise that that is still a challenge. Also, enforcement is completely unfunded, but it's clearly an important activity. It's not funded through income, let's put it that way. We are seeking PPAs where we can, but not everybody can afford a PPA. But then, without a PPA, the amount of resource that we can put into an application is very, very limited. I think, did you say as well, explain what is covered by the designation? So it's all the non-majors, and non-majors means it's below 10 houses if it's residential, or less than 1,000 square metre of commercial, but it also excludes all householder development, and it excludes also retrospective applications. And I think I've listed all the exclusions now. And to note though that so the inspectorate recommends that for any of those non-majors that are still liable, applicants should still come to us, because there's basically the inspectorate can't levy sills and therefore can't use sill as a mitigation. So hence they are actually recommending on their website that sill liable non-majors should also come to us. Nevertheless, there has been an annoying trickle of, and I think it's more than a handful by now, but it's maybe 7 or 8 that are currently looking to go through that route.
Thank you, and I'm sure we'll revisit all this when it's the next time we're hoping to have that paper.
To the September committee, that's right, because we're looking to submit in mid-October. At that point, we expect to have 2 full quarters of meeting the statutory targets.
Okay. Is there anything more on the risk report? Okay, so we are asked to, it's just for noting, so we consider that noted and move on to the finance update report. Mrs. Alex again.
Thank you, Chair. So, finance paper is again for noting, and it seeks to bring together the revenue and the capital implications of services within the remit of this committee, and that includes the in-year expenditure against their budgets, the delivery of savings, capital delivery, and you'll see in the table there's quite a breadth of projects, types of projects within that, and the overall position of the Growth and Regeneration Directorate. I'm going to ask Ben Hegarty, our Finance Business Partner, to be able to answer any questions and use any numbers. But finally, just to acknowledge that this paper hasn't picked up the Employment Skills and Lifelong Learning Service, which is the service that Jane Taylor, who presented earlier, heads. And we're in discussions with the Executive Director who looks after children education services about if and how that should be reported in here. At the moment it's reported to their respective main committee. What I would say is it's all or largely grant funded. Okay. So.
Sorry, it's a really boring process point, but I note that there's a line that has, I think it's like grammatical error, that makes it unclear what it means. Page 3 or page 81 in the public pack, it just ends Operations Centre, comma. And I don't know whether that means it should be a full stop or whether there's more text that's missing. If we just clarify that, it's at 3.5, sorry. Paragraph 3.5.
Yeah.
That should be a full stop.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilcox.
prove that Rob is not the only pedant in the room.
We never had any doubt.
On table 2 on page 80, or page 2 of the main report, the other line, the other line, there's a bracket missing of the 3,040,000. So I'm assuming that's still a negative thing, it's not a thing. And I'm interested in what that other line actually contains. Is it wholly providing accommodation for those experiencing homelessness? And if it is that, why is it not in the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee as opposed to this committee, please?
Sure. So, Councillor Wilcox, so the other is an aggregation of a few quite small lines, of which they're mostly directorate level budgets. So there's a small budget managing both Alex's immediate salary and John Smith's salary, and a small amount of funding that they have to divide up. So the reason that's showing is 3 million is that when we did the approved budget, we temporarily housed a few savings and income targets within there, and then when we got to the revised budget, we have by that point farmed out to where they should sit. So it is within the remit of this committee. It's just a few curious odds and ends that we have within. So,
but it is 90% of the rest of the budget there.
At the approved budget point, it was, but the relevant comment is the revised budget, the one just to the right, where you'll see that it shrank to just 506k.
Right.
So there was that difference between the 3 million and the 500k was a bunch of temporary savings measures that at the approved budget stage were temporarily housed there before being sat where they should be sat. Does that make sense?
Sort of.
Any other? Oh, I saw Rob's hand first and then. Oh, Councillor Renaud.
Just a helpful suggestion that perhaps committee members could send spelling errors outside of this committee meeting to be dealt with, so we focus on substantive issues going forward.
Well, I've got some substantive issues as well. So, you've got in here 60k shortfall on legible city contract to a series of digital screens being vandalised. Be interested to know where they are, for a start. But what's the cost projection if we remove those screens that are most heavily vandalised? So if we just stopped having digital screens, would we actually have like money? Because the big argument against these things is that they get vandalised and that actually is worse for public realm. I wonder whether you could comment on that.
So the screens are, they tend to be in the city centre. They're not the big ones that you see on the major parts of the highway network. There is income from the screens which is returned to the main central corporate budget of the council, so it just goes into the bottom line. Some of the income is used to, the reason we refer to Legible City is that some of the income from the advertising screens is used to update the monoliths that you see around the city with maps and the finger posts, because obviously the city changes and they need updating. The costs associated with repairing them are borne by the organisation within which we're in a contract.
So you're saying that we wouldn't be able to estimate just on the hoof what we would be able to. I mean, 60k shortfall doesn't seem an awful lot in the grand scheme of the budget.
The overall income from the advertising budget is I'd say between 3 and 4 times as much as that.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm quite keen to understand a bit more about this, maybe offline. I've got another question though. It says that we're reducing the requirement of interim staff. What's that to do with? Like, why are we reducing the reliance on interim staff? And does that include like senior management level? Because obviously we've had a number of interim appointments. Should we comment on that as well?
I'm happy to say that as well. So This is the period 2, so this is the end of May report, and the interim staff name refers to the staff that's known was referring to before, so she had a few more interim staff than she has now, and those have been compounded in the period, which is roughly 3 remainder that she needs to make a decision. Does that help?
Yeah. Councillor Weston and then Councillor Wilcox.
Yeah, thank you. Mine's just on table 4, if I may. Just noting for example, the flood defence overspend there and various other parts of it on the whole table to us. I appreciate adding an expansion note above, by the way. I know you mentioned on that does actually really help. Thank you very much for that. I'm just wondering, for example, on the delivery and regeneration of Bedminster Green, are we expecting it to go back up to the 7.2 million? The underspend is based on delays in planning. Is that purely temporary, or is actually there a saving there that is going to persist?
My understanding is that we will continue to need to spend the budget.
Right, so one's planning to go back up, so actually it's a flip on that. Okay, on the flood defence line, we say there's a forecast overspend based on current grant allocations. Do we believe there'll be an additional grant allocation or grant application or stream of money or whatever else that might come along to settle that, or are we actually going to plug that shortfall with local taxation reserves?
So this is a joint project with our colleagues at South Gloucestershire Council. South Gloucestershire Council are the accountable authority for the funding. I believe that the overspend has been removed and more money has been provided into the project recently, and it's a grant from the Environment Agency.
Yeah, and final one, Chair, with your grace. PL11, Cattle Market Road, redevelopment, obviously the budget, that's got 0%. Thank you for the explanation. When do we believe that decision on harbour dredging is going to come along? So when are we going to have to almost realise the additional spend that's going to have to happen? Are we looking this financial year, next financial year? Just wondering when that's going to fall.
I will have to answer that in writing.
Could we share
Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about paragraph 3.4.1, the 250k shortfall on income from e-scooters. What percentage is that on in terms of an overall drop, please?
Are you asking me to give you some immediate mental arithmetic, or to give you an idea of what we're budgeting for?
You can reply in writing.
Well, I know. Well, so I can actually do this one because we're budgeting for £500,000, and we're getting we're actually forecasting at P2 that it would be 250 because the contract wasn't tracking the forecast with TIA. I believe though that we will see it improving over the course of this financial year. I don't expect us to meet the full £500,000.
So you're saying there was a 50% drop in ridership in that initially? That's improving?
So it is improving across the region, and TIA have recently been bought out by another company called DOT that we would expect to see a new app to improve performance there.
Wait, I'll get bought out before you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments on the finance paper? No. Okay, we are asked to note the contents of the report on professional P2 alternate position within the remit of the Economy and Skills Committee. So I'll consider that noted, and with that, it brings us to the end of the meeting. So thank you very much, everyone, for this first Economy and Skills Committee, and we meet again on the 30th of September for another edition, yes. And in the meantime, you can all go and watch the Olympics if that's your thing, or enjoy the sun, or go to another meeting, or whatever it is that you've got next lined up. Thank you. Bye.